Mm-hmm. Playing as some now. Yes. Okay. So,
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another broadcast about Fury Warriors. Today, we don't play anything. Today is not a playing day. That sounded better in my head. It really did. Today is a lore theory day. Or, well, I say lore theory. It's more of a. Well, it's kind of that, actually, isn't it? It's a theory based around the. There we go. Trying to set up my stuff here. Okay. So, I say it's a lore theory. It's not really a lore theory per se. It's more of a. Well, I mean, again, I say it's a lore theory, but eh. Let me go to live screen. There we go, live screen. Okay, so what we're gonna do is move this. Because there's no webcam today. I mug. Not that channel. Oh, Lord. Where the dang is that? I had it open. It's all the way at the end. There we go. Okay. So, if this screen doesn't... Oh, hello.
Hello.
Okay, so if this screen doesn't tell you exactly... For those of you that are not in the Discord server where I posted that I would be talking about this, for those of you that don't know what I'm about to be streaming about, it is the theory surrounding one particular ship. And no, it's not Zuikaku or the ultimate badass of Azur Lane, aka Enterprise. It's the other ultimate badass. And no, it is not Akagi. Well, I don't even think Akagi would have been the ultimate badass, would she? Of the Sakura.
I wouldn't think so.
I think it would have been either Takao, Ottogo, Well, we don't get to see Ottogo fight, do we? At least not directly.
Yeah, and we just see Artigo as the loving big sister. We hardly see her fight.
Yeah. I mean, we don't even get to see the fight she has with what's her face? Cleveland. But it is the other badass, the badass of the Royal Navy. The one right down here, suddenly denying Zuikaku her kill by being a mere maid. I'm no one really, just a simple maid passing by. However, this simple maid might as well be the ultimate badass in, if not Azur Lane, then the Royal Navy. Sorry to all you fans of the other ship girls in the Royal Navy. And the reason why I say this is actually what she uses to essentially nope anyone's attacks. Her gauntlets. And she has these on pretty much at all times. Her actual, I think those are anti-air guns, in fact, are attached to them. So, why is that important? Well, she nopes just about any rounds that have hit them, including a katana that was empowered by essentially multi-attacks from Zuikaku's rig. Which...
in planes.
Yeah, which would have presumably been to cut Enterprise in half. And then it's just suddenly somehow blocked by Belfast. Now, of course, we have seen multiple ships in Azur Lane tank rounds that would have really just turned just about any other human into pizza topping. AKA bombs, artillery shells, just about anything ships have been firing in World War II would have essentially just either put a massive hole into a human being, aka 50 caliber rounds, and 20 millimeters if you want to be generous. But anything higher than that would have essentially turned a human being into pizza topping. And I'm probably grossing people out with pizza topping right about now. Sorry for anyone that's eating pizza. But, Belfast, and yes, I included this picture. She is I'm not even sure if she's the second or third ship. Yeah, she's the second ship in the Edinburgh class. Essentially the second oldest sister in the Edinburgh class. Edinburgh being the oldest sister, and Sheffield being the youngest. How the hell Edinburgh is the, I want to say, dunce of the three. She's not really the dunce. She's just the kind of the weak older sister, surprisingly. She's scared out of her wits 9 times out of 10 that we see her in any form of combat or on a mission. And presumably failing to do her job. I mean, she does catch the black mental cube with her face.
And it could be called the Belfast class.
Yeah. It's like, why is Belfast the lead ship in this half the time, where Sheffield being the... Uh-oh. Someone's lagging out.
That.
Yep. Someone lagged out. So, Belfast really shouldn't be the badass that she is, being the second ship in the Edinburgh class. Edinburgh should have been, presumably, if we're to consider half the other ships in pretty much all the other classes that end up being the badass of them. Unless we want to count the Yorktown class. Enterprise ends up being the badass in that one, but she's more badass by default. Because, well, her older sister is essentially bedridden pretty much the entirety of the season 1. So we never actually get to see Yorktown in combat. Well, we do, sort of. We see her riding alongside Enterprise and Hornet, but we don't actually see her in combat, so we don't know how badass Yorktown is, if she ever was. We just know that Enterprise is pretty much the badass of the Yorktown class, but that's in keeping with World War II. However, Belfast, of all people, is the one that kicks butt most of the time, other than Sheffield. But why is Edinburgh the one that's the scaredy cat of the three? I mean, that made no sense to me. But maybe there's an excuse in universe that we've never been given. But the simple fact is, Belfast has blocked rounds that really should have killed her or killed anyone else. Okay, this picture here, I kind of kept in just because this would be Belfast to a T. She wouldn't give two shits if Enterprise is Code G mode at the moment. You know, she would do this. Just freaking just walk right up. Don't give a crap if Enterprise fires at her and just grab her and just boob hug her. I mean, she really is the best mate, despite this picture of her nearly spilling the tea in the teapot. Belfast, that was not your day. That really must not have been your day. But she is loving, kind 9 times out of the 10. However, don't tick her off. I mean, as this picture shows, she is more than capable of, sweeping even Enterprise off her feet. And then we have, the scene that will forever live in our minds from the anime. The tie grab scene. Where Enterprise is just being all kinds of mopey, claiming that she's useless now because she can't fight. Because something's apparently, quote-unquote, apparently wrong with her. Or clearly wrong with her, in her words. Belfast just walks right up to her, seemingly calm, tilts her head and smiles, and while Enterprise is confused about the smile, she just, while still smiling, grabs Enterprise and yanks her to the point where they're face to face, within kissing distance, mind you, and proceeds to drag Enterprise by the tie down to the cafeteria, where then she presumably forces Enterprise to sit down, and then tells her, you need to eat. Enterprise, claiming that she's not that hungry, Belfast responds then in a commanding voice, I said eat. Let me point this out to you, how out of character this seemed to be for Belfast to everyone else. Unicorn, who is presumably dealt with Belfast a lot, and presumably also one of the maids that attends Illustrious, and is quite clearly a second older sister figure to Unicorn. She quite clearly, Unicorn, seeing Belfast dragging Enterprise by the tie to the cafeteria, says, that's not like her. What's wrong with Belfast? Of all things, she asks what's wrong with Belfast. She does not ask what's wrong with Enterprise. She does not ask, everyone else is concerned that Enterprise is in trouble. And then Unicorn is the one asking what's wrong with Belfast. That shows how out of character that must have been to Unicorn, who is more used to seeing in Belfast being kind, sweet, warm, and gentle. Yet, this side of Belfast is so out of character that everyone just is all scared of what the heck's going on. Even at one point, during in the cafeteria, we have a bunch of other ship girls kind of watching in, like a bunch of weird people. In pretty much every other date scene we see, where basically the older sisters or even the siblings of the two characters in question are watching in on said date. However, this was not a date. This is simply Belfast putting Enterprise in her place, where we end up getting a scene like, okay, what's happening? And then one of the other ship girls responds with, lovers quarrel? With a question mark at the end, as if even they did not understand what was happening. But clearly, they all feel that something's more between Enterprise and Belfast. The fact that they said lovers quarrel. Now, what does this all have to do with why then those gauntlets in Belfast? Well, Belfast is quite clearly stronger than most of her sisters in the sense that she seems calm, sweet, and kind, but give her a reason to, and she can be strict as all hell. And very, very strong on the battlefield. Even Prince Eugene says in, that, that despite her looks, she is still a legendary warrior of the seas, and not to underestimate her. This is coming from a person of the Iron Blood, a faction meant to represent Germany from World War II. And in World War II, Germany viewed Britain as, well, they kind of held out a little bit of hope that Britain might be more accepting of, well, okay, they did at least have some, they gave, the reason why they didn't outright attack Britain at first is because, well, racism. They actually hoped that they kind of viewed Britain as potentially, at least tangentially, part of the Aryan race. So they gave them kind of a little bit of a grace period to try to figure that out. Of course, once Britain did not live up to that ideal, they, well, attacked them. However, the Germany being very prideful at that time, and basically viewing themselves as the top dogs of everyone else, for someone of the Iron Blood who is meant to represent that faction, to claim that even though Belfast, in the Japanese dubbed version, calling even though she looks like a joke, that to not underestimate her and that she's still a legendary warrior of the seas. Even Belfast claiming that she is thankful for the praise, as if that was actually high praise coming from an Iron Blood of all people. So, and considering that Prince Eugene is supposed to be higher up in the ranks as well, we can assume that is supposed to be very high praise indeed. So for Belfast to have gotten that praise from an Iron Blood in one of the higher echelons, well, that speaks a lot to her combat capabilities. Because even at that time, they will respect combat. Generally speaking, warriors will recognize another warrior and will respect their skill if they show it. So we can assume that prior to, of course, the faction splitting, Belfast and Prince Eugene might have at one point had either at the very least a rivalry, if not some, maybe, because we do know in the game that there were sortie exercises before the faction splitting between the groups. We do know, for example, that when the carriers were being introduced to the factions, that of course some of the ships were being converted to said carriers, and that there were a lot of practice mock battles between the factions to not only, of course, make sure that they're in tip-top form. This is what's referred to in modern day called war games. They are essentially mock combat scenarios that are intended to actually improve combat capabilities amongst your troops, but also simulate actual combat scenarios. So essentially, put them to a point. So basically, you would set up, say, actually, for example, SEAL Team 6 attacking Bin Laden's house. They would have had a set of what's called war games, where they would set up a mock version of Bin Laden's presumed villa, and they would go through the villa, taking out either simulated targets, whether it be in form of cardboard cutouts, or an actual person. This, of course, would be normally done with dummy rounds, usually like a paint dart kind of style round, or presumably how they wanted to be real enough, rubber bullets. There are variants of guns today that do have a modification allowing them to accept paint rounds. So they're basically just they're basically like a more of a simulated version of a paintball gun that's meant to fire like a paintball, but it's actually a bullet that's meant to be aerodynamic and whatnot. Think the blood spatter dart from Triple X in the first Triple X movie. If anyone knows that movie, then I love you. Anyways, so the fact that we know that there were said battles, said war games actually, between the factions before the faction splitting, in the game, when we get that during an event, it's a kind of a flashback that Kaga is having. Well, then we know that perhaps Belfast and Prince Eugen would have come across each other at some point. So the simple fact that this had happened indicates. Oh, hold on. Yes, it would have been a case. It would have seemed like a very much of a case of Deus Ex Machina. That's kind of what happened with Belfast. Belfast intervened at the very last second, blocking the attack from Zuikaku. But even Zuikaku seemed surprised that her attack was blocked at all. Even somehow just so confused that a maid, of all things, blocked the attack. So the fact that we get the clear indication that Belfast and Prince Eugen knew each other to begin with, and not have just like know each other on the battlefield, and even exchanging some form of friendly banter? Question mark? Before, of course. I mean, let's be real here. She's like, when Prince Eugen says, while we're here, since we're both here, why not settle old scores away from Ironblood and Royal Navy? And then Belfast responds with, I don't object to this proposal, but then she proceeds to basically proverbially raise the middle finger to Prince Eugen by saying, but you should remember, we never fight at anything less than full force. In which the screen pans to two heavy cruisers of the Edinburgh class, Edinburgh and Sheffield, riding up to them, along with a battle cruiser and two battleships. The Queen Elizabeth, Warspite, who is a battleship, and Hood, who is a battle cruiser. Which, by the way, is currently if the fight had gone the way it was gonna go, would have been facing off against, if we're also to count in Belfast, would have counted 3 heavy cruisers and 1 battle cruiser and 2 battleships. Facing off against a 1 heavy cruiser, 2 destroyers, and 2 carriers. Backed up by what is presumed to be maybe a handful of siren ships. We don't really know what class of siren ships they were. They could have been battleship or cruiser, for all I know. I'm going to go with maybe cruiser or battleship, or maybe even battle cruiser. Who the heck knows? It's kind of hard to tell with the siren ships. But that is still a very, very lopsided engagement. Because we're just right now, I was just counting the Royal Navy ships that were there. Let's not forget that there were also Eagle Union ships present. There was Cleveland. And then, of course, we have Laffey, who, of course, had just sheathed her weaponry. But still, if push comes to shove, she might have actually gone into the fight. And then we have Javelin as well. So we have grand total of, 4 heavy cruisers. I'm kind of discounting Hornet because she's currently at this point exhausted. But she would be the kind of the wild card. I think she could have still fought if need be. So we have 4 heavy cruisers, 1 battle cruiser, 2 battleships, and push comes to shove, 1 carrier, and again we have 2 push comes, give or take 2, by the way, destroyers. So we have, I kind of I'm kind of keeping Laffy and Hornet up in the air because Hornet is of course exhausted. Whether or not she would still be able to fight is kind of the question of the day. And then Laffy, it would have been a case of push comes to shove. She might have actually gone into the fight if it was needed. But if it wasn't needed, she would have not fought at all. That is still one hell of a lopsided engagement. So, I mean, they're facing off against one heck of a force. So, Prince Eugen actually say we might as well quit while we're ahead is a smart as hell move, because they really are outgunned. Carriers are strong as hell, but they currently are down one carrier who is exhausted as all hell, with her fight with Enterprise, who Enterprise is currently disabled as well. Still standing until the enemy ships leave. But still, the fact remains is that they only have one carrier active, mind you. Zuikaku could theoretically get into the engagement, but she is exhausted, knew she only probably had one hit in her until Enterprise took her out. If she took her out, mind you, if she could have, she might have actually done it. But the fact remains that Zuikaku is kind of tuckered out, so they would have been dealing with one full strength, presumably, full strength carrier, and one heavily exhausted carrier versus the Eagle Union's critically wounded carrier, well, disabled carrier in the form of Enterprise, and one heavily exhausted, if not moderately damaged carrier. But still, that's still an impressive force coming at them, because they still have two fully armed, fully rested destroyers and a fully rested heavy cruiser, not to mention three fully loaded and fully rested heavy cruisers, and again, three fully rested and fully loaded battleship or battlecruiser class ships coming at them. Versus, again, the Ironblood and Ironblood and Sakura Empire ships that are there, one being heavily exhausted, one being probably not fully loaded, but at least fully rested, or sort of. She would have been slightly exhausted, but not to the degree of Zuikaku. Then we have Prince Eugen, and then of course Z-23 and Ayanami. The three of them are somewhat fully rested and of course fully loaded. Ayanami, we don't know how much rest she's gotten, but we can presume that she is more rested than the others. So they're dealing with even though the enemy side is not as rested as them, the fact remains that they would be heavily relying on siren ships, which have not been actually doing much. They have been sitting there, doing nothing. Presumably, I'm guessing the reason why they're sitting there doing nothing is, I'm guessing because Akagi is holding the actual black mental cube. Which actually, no. Presumably, Zuikaku could have been given them a few commands, but I don't think they were, because the fact remains that the siren ships were doing nothing. So, The siren ships could have just been blasting them instead of having the other ship girls do the job for them. But still, they're still dealing with a heavily reinforced unit. One is fully rested and fully armed. So, there's still that. So it could have been that Zuikaku was, of course, exhausted from the fight, and Belfast had more than enough energy to block that attack. But the fact remains, she blocked a fully charged attack from Zuikaku. And
it just could be anime logic.
Oh, but it goes even beyond that. Take, for instance, the other times she's blocked rounds with those gauntlets. There was the other time she did it, which she blocked an entire salvo meant to kill Edinburgh and Sheffield. And from, I believe, Prince Eugen, mind you. I don't know if the other ships took part in that bombardment. But still, it was a full-on volley ready to destroy the other ship girls. And she just tanked the entire salvo with her gauntlets and seemed entirely intact. She even
Like I
just...
said,
Say again?
be anime logic. Like I
True.
said, it just be anime logic.
True. But still, I mean, that's pretty dang heavily armored stuff if she's just blocking it with those gauntlets, and is somehow intact. We don't really see her do it much afterwards, but the fact remains that she manages to block those attacks pretty dang easily. And combined with her just badass nature in being Belfast in of herself, I'm thinking that out of every ship blocking capability that we have seen in the anime, I mean, we've seen them just put the same cross-arm motion to block attacks before. Cleveland did it when the sirens, in the first episode, mind you, when the siren ships fired the missiles at her and it hit, presumably, and of course water spout comes up, but she has her arms up as if to block, and she's somewhat intact. That could be a method of just them bracing, because there is in battleship in ship-to-ship warfare, when an enemy fires a salvo at you, the general command that usually goes out is brace, which everyone, generally speaking, hits the deck or grabs onto something and holds on tight. One of the two. They usually grab onto something, hold on tight, or hit the deck, and it is usually to reduce casualties. And we even see Unicorn do it during her fight with Kaga, where she holds up her arms to block an attack coming from the beast thingamajig, which succeeds, quote unquote. She's still alive, but she's downed and probably disabled. Basically downed enough to almost get eaten. But the fact remains that cross-arm motion is commonly done to block attacks. But most of the time we've seen that happen, and presumably, I mean, Cleveland, of course, walks away without a scratch, but then again, she could have, in theory, done something to make sure she didn't get hit, or barely missed her? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, those are missiles. I mean, they could have hit the sides of her and blew the water up, and that was just her minimizing damage. But in another case, we see Laffy tank torpedoes for Javelin, and she doesn't do the cross-arm motion, or we don't see her do it, and she gets heavily damaged from the torpedoes. So that could also just be the durability of course, heavy cruisers compared to, of course, destroyers. But also the fact that, well, Unicorn took rounds that, and well, then she's a light carrier, which might have contributed to her inability to tank those rounds from Kaga. But still, I mean, the fact that arm motion has been readily utilized to reduce, if not block, damage, we can presume that is their general idea of the general command that usually goes out from a ship when a salvo is launched at you, which is usually just yelled brace, which is also just a shortened version of brace for impact, is generally speaking the full phrase, but usually just the word that yells out is brace. It's short and sweet and usually tells people what the hell to do. So that could be that, but just the sheer fact that Belfast has used on multiple occasions to block attacks that would end a ship with it and just walk away without a scratch. So I'm going to go on a limb and just probably say that her gauntlets, being that they're also armored, most other ships don't have armor on their forearms, mind you. In fact, I don't know any other ship, aside from some of the Ironblood ships, actually, that don't have some form of arm piece as armor. I mean, we see one ship in the Ironbloods that has these claw armor things on her arms. Then there's Reno from the Eagle Union in game that has cybernetic hands. She even refers them as the ability to use superpowers. I have to look at that again. But her hands are presumably amped up with something. Question mark. The sheer fact is that there's not many other ships with ARM-based armor. And so, considering the evidence we have here, I think Belfast's gauntlets are probably the most OP armor we have seen in Azur Lane, at least as far as the anime is concerned. We haven't yet seen her basically use them and not get, we haven't seen her use them and get disabled. So, compared to Unicorn, who does that and gets disabled, of course, there's the argument to be made that it could be just heavy cruisers versus, well, actually, no, correction. She is not a heavy cruiser. To my knowledge, she's a light cruiser. Let me check.
Who?
At Belfast. I could have sworn. Let me check. Man, let me check the game because
She's a light cruiser.
yeah, she's a light cruiser. So I totally forgot that the Edinburgh class were light cruisers. I am such a dunce.
Even light cruisers can have big titties.
Yeah. I like how you point that out. That is so you. Okay, so back to that fight with Rikaku now. Correction. We have 3 light cruisers, 2 destroyers, 1 heavy cruiser, which is the Cleveland class. Cleveland being there, I believe, is a heavy cruiser. Let me double check, because I really need to double check that now.
Cleveland? I think she's light.
No, yeah, she's a light cruiser. Never mind, I totally forgot about that. I can't remember what the game labeled her as then. Okay, so Reno is indeed a light cruiser, by the way. So again, so I am really out of touch. I totally forgot that Belfast was a light cruiser. Holy crap. Okay, so that fight with Zuikaku and the Ironblood would have been matched up via... Okay, so the Red Axis side would have had 1 heavily damaged and exhausted carrier, 1 probably moderately damaged, if not lightly damaged, and not exhausted, but definitely vulnerable at that point, carrier. We would have had 2 destroyers, 1 probably lightly damaged from the previous engagement, but would have been also had a time to rest. And then we have 1 fully rested and fully armed destroyer in the form of Z-23, and then 1 heavy cruiser, which would have had plenty of time to rest and of course load up. So fully rested and fully healed and fully armed heavy cruiser, which combined with siren ships of questionable class. I'm gonna go with probably heavy / light, maybe a battleship here and there, but they did not look that big to be battleship class, because we've seen some of the battleship class variants and they're usually much bigger. So I'm gonna go say maybe, if not light or heavy cruiser class siren ships, let's go with destroyer. So possible questionable lighter classes of siren ships up against 4 light cruisers, all of which are, well, 1 light cruiser that is lightly damaged and presumably moderately rested, against 2, along with 3 light cruisers that are fully rested and fully armed, and along with 2 destroyers, probably moderately or / lightly damaged, but are also rested, and probably moderate to slight light repairs haven't been made. And then we have 1 battle cruiser, fully rested and fully armed, and 2 battleships, fully rested and fully armed. that is still one hell of a lopsided engagement. Heavy cruisers and light cruisers are, generally speaking, the type of ships you utilize to protect your fleet, your main fleet vessels, aka carriers and battleships and battle cruisers. However, battleships and battle cruisers can still be taken out by destroyers and light cruisers and cruisers. Those things in a pack formation in a group formation, in fact, can still take down higher levels in higher tiered vessels. For example, in World War II, there was actually a destroyer or a light cruiser that went up against ships of higher class than it and flat out just basically point blank range torpedoed them. Suicide run, essentially, but somehow lived. The brass balls on that American captain. I have to give him props for that. I really do. Because he was the tiny little puppy in a room full of bears ready to maul and destroy him. Essentially what was happening there. But the fact remains that a destroyer, along with other destroyers and cruisers of lighter class, went and followed his lead and went in and just harassed the hell out of these higher ships. And despite having lighter guns, they still have torpedoes. Torpedoes are ship killers. And so those things can take out heavy ships if need be. Mind you, they're not going to be doing it as well, and destroyers are cannon fodder to things like battleships and battle cruisers, but get them together. But at that point, it's a simple numbers game. But the fact remains is that a heavy cruiser, just no matter how heavily armed and armored it is, you got a bunch more ships coming at it. Destroyers and light cruisers combined, along with battle cruiser and battleships. Yeah, Prince Eugene knew she was fucked if she took them on. So she knew to quit while she was ahead. Which, I mean, let's be real here, she made the good call. So, I mean, much to the umbrage of Z23, but we still get a hilarious line from Z23 afterwards. I love Z23. Her reactions to things are hilarious. like, what Alf? And nobody cares what you feel. I love Z23. I really do. But the sheer fact that Belfast, she exudes elegance. She really does. Elegance and, decorum, everything a maid should be. And then she just comes out being a freaking badass, putting... Oh, hello, what the heck? Did I lose you? Ah! Oh, there you are. You lagged out. You okay? Your Wi-Fi going to crap again? Hello? My mic going to crap. Uh-oh. Hold on a second, people. We might have a situation. Be right back, screen. You okay there? Oh. We appear to be having technical difficulties. Up. You okay there? Oh my lord, is my mic, is it my headphones? Hold on.
I'm having fucking Wi-Fi problems.
Oh, lovely. Okay. So it's yeah, I mean, it's just a simple fact that I mean, come on, let's be real here. It's like these ship girls are crazy. I mean, oh, come on, that's not the screen I want. Good lord. Where are we? No, that's that screen. Ay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay. Oh, back to that screen. Yeah, I mean, Belfast, just seemingly sweet, sweet, kind, warm, gentle, loving, elegant, exuding elegance and whatnot. And then she goes and does things like this. Fan art, of course, still. Doing things, well, one could say that's being the loving maid that she is, but, well, I mean, that's more than just the loving maid, it's the loving girlfriend. And then we get things like this. Just frickin' nope, you will not harm her situation here. And then we get, just overall situations where she just is she might as well be the ultimate badass of Azur Lane. She might as well be. I mean, not really the badass of Azur Lane, but the badass of the Royal Navy. Out of all the ships in the Royal Navy, I swear to God, Belfast is one of the strongest. Just because of the things she's done. There is no question in my mind that Belfast, of all people, is probably one of the strongest ships in the Royal Navy as far as, well, being a light cruiser is concerned. We have not yet seen any other ships having a spotlight on them in the Royal Navy in their combat prowess. We have not seen them in such a prominent role other than Belfast, and we only get like a couple of episodes with Sheffield and Edinburgh being in the forefront. And they were pretty, well, Edinburgh in particular was pretty laughable. Oh, great. She's lagging out again. But just Belfast, of all people, second ship in the Edinburgh class is the badass. Just, wow. I know I've been ranting a little bit, but just these gauntlets, in my opinion, are probably the most OP thing in the anime. And I really, really hope we get to see more of Belfast and Enterprise. And just Belfast being both the maid, the beautiful maid, best maid we've seen her be. But also, I just really want to see episodes with her and Enterprise having a relationship. That's what I want to see. Wi-Fi problems again? Wi-Fi issues? Wi-Fi issues? Oh, Lord. Okay. I think we're probably going to stop this here for now. So, yeah. Yeah, I personally feel that maybe, perhaps, Belfast is one of the most OP ships in Azur Lane. If not, I mean, she may not be the most OP ship in Azur Lane, but her armor most certainly is one of the most OP things we've seen. Her gauntlet armor. So, I mean, as far as armor is concerned, I think that's one of the most OP things we've seen. But, I'll let you guys decide. Leave a comment in the comment section down below and tell me what you think. Is Belfast one of the most OP ships armor-wise in Azur Lane? Or is there someone else you think that is most OP? And mind you, I'm taking into account the anime. We, of course, know that in the game, she's not the most OP armor-wise. But in the anime, she definitely tanks rounds and better than most. So I would like to hear what you guys think. What do y'all think about Belfast and her strengths? Is there anyone else you think might actually equal or best her in armor? In taking both into account the anime and potentially speaking the game. Again, I know that in the game there are better ships armor-wise, but I'm taking more into account the anime here because that's where we see her gauntlets come into play more. So,
I always guess them.
Yeah, she always uses them to block. So that's kind of where I'm like, So leave a comment in the comment section down below, and well, tonight hopefully we will have a D&D session with Vic. Hopefully, I may or may not join. Viro says I should probably join to just not just kind of try to control my eccentricities probably a little bit. But I'll see when I think about when it's tonight. Plus, also I got family in town right now, so depending on.
I also wanted to talk to you about the age of the ship girls. Like we were never told about like how old that the ship girls are.
Yes. I'll definitely go over that a little bit more once the stream ends. Yeah. I'll definitely be willing to go over that because that is definitely something a question that we should answer. Is what scaling up of the age should be in the ship girls based on their class and rank and whatnot, or if that should be more up to because clearly the destroyers are younger.
Yeah, the destroyers are like little kids to teenagers.
Right.
The crews and the cruisers and main fleets like about
They're definitely adults, full-on adults.
Yeah,
Very
they're-
young adults.
older. Yeah, they're like older adults.
Yeah. And then if you have the light carrier, like Unicorn, who's still quite 30 years young, he's a little kid. So yeah, I'll definitely
Yeah.
with that with you off screen. Yeah. So again, I have been Cactum of Fury Warriors, and I'll see you all in the next bout. Have a good